I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Kelly. We are back with another video. If y'all are new to the channel, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button. I would very much appreciate it. And if you are a returning listener or subscriber, thank you as always for being a friend. And if you could like the video, give it a comment. Let me know what you think, guys. I would really appreciate it and it would really help me out. And thank you in advance to all who are here watching. So guys, I wanted to jump on here really quick and give you guys some case updates on several cases that I have discussed on this channel and I have been personally following. And so if you guys are invested in any of these or all of these, then I'm just here to provide a quick little update. I'm not going to really go too far into each one of these. We already kind of know about them. If you don't, go back, check out the videos that I've done on each one of these, and it'll give you more of an in-depth view. So without further ado, let's get into it, y'all. Okay, guys, so we're going to start with Chad Doerman update, the, piece of shit father, if you can even call him that, who took the life of his 3 small, very young sons in such a brutal and heinous fashion. He's going through it right now. He's going through the court process. So we're going to look at what's new with his case and then look at some body cam footage of him acting like a little biatch in the jail cell, just feeling sorry for himself and crying the tears of a piece of shit human. So let's look at this video. There were some new details released about how he allegedly committed these heinous acts.
New details are emerging about the horrific day on June 15th when Claremont County investigators say that Chad Doerman admitted to killing his 3 sons. I've received the bill of particulars from the investigation. The public document lays out what investigators say took place that day. A warning here that some details of this case can be uncomfortable to hear.
Stand up! Stand up now!
Chad Doerman was taken into custody without issue as he sat on the side of his home on June 15th. The bill of particulars document says he sat there and calmly watched his wife Laura undertake futile life-saving measures on her 3 children. It all began, according to the document, shortly after Chad Doerman came home early from work and asked his wife and 3 boys to join him in the master bedroom for a nap. The document says Doerman grabbed a Marlin model HC-22 caliber rifle from next to the bed in a gun safe and shot one son twice. Investigators say Doerman's wife immediately began to render aid to her son and yelled for her other children to run. The document says Doerman's stepdaughter walked into the room and witnessed the shooting and ran out of the back of the home, chasing after her brother, who was already running toward a field. Doerman, according to the document, gave chase and began shooting, hitting his son, knocking him to the ground. Doerman then walked up to his son, where he fired 1 shot into his head at close range. The document then lays out how the stepdaughter ran back toward the house and picked up the youngest son, Chase, and tried to run from the property. Doerman caught up to them and demanded that she put Chase down. When she did, Doerman attempted to shoot his son in the head, but the gun didn't fire. At that point, Chase ran to his mother on the side of the house where she was rendering aid to her other son. Doerman would eventually shoot Chase at close range, killing him. The document also reveals that Doerman's wife, Laura Hensley, fought back at one point. Hensley grabbed the firearm, placing her thumb over the barrel. Doerman then firing the rifle, shooting through her thumb. In the account of that day, the document says Doerman made several statements like, "I did it, take me to jail." It goes on to say Doerman admitted during a recorded interview that he had been thinking about shooting his sons since October, and it had been weighing so heavy on him that he hadn't slept for 3 or 4 days prior to murdering his 3 sons.
And see, that's just what I really don't understand, is that if you're thinking about this for months and months and months, I mean, death penalty right away, first of all. Second of all, seek some help. If somebody, you know, you're thinking these bad thoughts about hurting people, especially your children, your young children. I mean, what possesses someone to have these thoughts for months and to not say anything, to not try to seek some help, to not try to get rid of those thoughts? It is beyond me. So those are just some of the more recent details that were released about this horrific story. So as far as the case goes, there was a gag order request for these proceedings that was denied in part by the judge, but did grant some stipulations or some parameters for some sort of gag order. Basically pretty routine stuff as far as it goes. This is it right here, just to list out 6 of these items that the judge, you know, wants people to comply with as far as the court proceedings go. Pretty standard. Counsel may not discuss the merits of this case with representatives of the news media. Counsel for the parties may not discuss facts of the case that are not in publicly filed records. Counsel for the parties may not discuss the evidence in this case unless it is an open court, and may not make any statements regarding the credibility or truthfulness of the defendant, and may not discuss any potential theories of their respective cases. And the counsel for the party shall strictly comply with professional conduct. So the defense basically wanted to obtain a protection order to limit the number of details prosecutors reveal in the case, but the judge refused and said he will not issue a broad protection order, and that they basically, both sides need to just practice discretion and, you know, act in accordance of the law and how the court proceedings normally would go. So now let's check out the body cam footage that came out in regards to this individual acting like a little peon. Just, you're man enough to kill your kids, but you are not man enough to hold it together whenever you go to jail. So that makes a lot of sense. Look at him smirking, smiling, whatever you want to call it, in this still shot of this body cam footage. And right here, he's realizing that he's probably going to get his anus stretched out in prison. And that's the face that he's making right there. That's my interpretation, at least. So let's see what we have here. What a loser.
So you know, Sarge, you didn't want to get dressed?
Yes, we're going to fight with him. We're aware. We're aware.
He doesn't deserve clothes, honestly. Shut your mouth.
Take her right off the elevator. Hey, Chad. Doing all right?
Imagine how hard it would be to, like, deal with people like this who are accused of committing these heinous crimes. I mean, personally, like, I kind of have always wanted to be a defense attorney, so I guess in theory or in practice, I would have to deal with people like this, but I think it would just be incredibly hard. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's part of the job, especially if you're a lawyer. You know, everyone deserves a defense, and I truly do believe that, but I don't know, people that hurt kids are just a different type of animal to me, and they elicit like a special type of rage from me in particular.
Okay, so I want you just to listen right now, okay? We're gonna have the public defender. I know, Chad, look at me, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. No, I know, just take a deep breath for me, okay? I'm gonna have your public defender come back and talk to you, okay? And then we're gonna go out and we're gonna do your hearing. Can you hear me? Do you need a second? Just take a deep breath.
You know what?
Okay.
He doesn't deserve a second, okay? You just need to, you know, get your shit together, because you did what you did. You weren't crying whenever you did take the life of your 3 children. So what are you crying for now?
So your public defender will come back and talk to you. You understand that? Okay. And then we'll go out for your hearing, okay? There is news media out there, okay? When you walk out, you'll see a piece of black tape on the floor. All I need from you is to stand on that piece of black tape, face the judge only, and just listen, okay? Your public defender or your attorney is going to do all the talking for you. They'll say that you have the right to remain silent, and I advise you to use that, okay? Because everything in there is recorded. So I want you, again, just to stand there, look at the judge, judge only, don't turn to the media, don't turn to anybody in the audience that you may know.
He's got to have mental issues. So this was him coming out of, this was him coming out of the arraignment, which I covered on a different video, where the prosecutor was basically laying out all of the facts of the case, and he was shown infamously crying during those details, even though he was the one that did it. But this was him basically exiting that courtroom.
Turn, we're walking out. Walk straight back in the room.
Those are like other inmates, I guess. What an
Turn to your left, face the wall.
person. He's gonna get wrecked in jail for doing what he did, and nobody deserves it more than him.
Bring your right foot back.
Take your socks off while you're at it, please.
So that's pretty much it. He really didn't have much to say other than a few crocodile tears, and I mean, there's nothing really for him to say. I mean, he was basically admitting to it straight away, and he's a piece of shit, and we all know this. So he had a court date back on June 16th, and at this time, the defense team requested funding from the court to move forward with mental health counseling and other investigators to be a part of their defense team. For what reason? I don't know. A protective order that the defense requested was also discussed, and that's what we talked about earlier with the gag order. So I guess as far as the additional funding request goes, I don't know if that was actually decided on, but he does have a scheduled court date for September 22nd coming up, and I'm sure there will be more details revealed at that time. So I guess the only purpose of taking this to trial is death penalty cases. I think have to be like, you can't just plead and then get death a penalty, I guess. I don't know. And I don't think the prosecutors are offering him a plea deal to give him just life without parole, because he was caught red-handed. I mean, he literally admitted to what he did. What he did was horrific and evil, and just completely beyond the scope of what is right and decent as far as humankind goes, and as far as a father being a father to his family. So, in this case, I think it's the prosecutors who are bringing this to trial, and it's really not up to the defense at all, but they have to provide some sort of defense to this man. So it just sucks that, taxpayers have to fund that, defense of somebody who is so monstrous as a human being. So let's move on to the next one, guys. Kouri Richens is another monstrous individual. This woman was accused of killing her husband, poisoning him to death with fentanyl, and then writing a children's book, basically to help her sons cope with losing a parent at a young age. So basically playing the card of a, grieving widow who had to raise 3 young boys because her husband overdosed, and she's making lemonade out of the lemons that she was given. So she writes this book, goes on this tour of trying to promote this book, making money off this book, and then she gets arrested a year later. So now it appears that she is suing the estate of her husband, claiming she deserves money and physical assets outlined in their prenuptial agreement, which is pretty freaking ballsy. If anything, she has the audacity, that's for sure. So she filed this lawsuit June 9th against her husband Eric Richens' estate, and she's seeking half of the equity in the couple's home, which is estimated to be worth at least $1.9 million. So the filing says Kouri is entitled to half of all equity in that family home. Oh, really, ma'am? What are you going to do with all that while you're in jail for the rest of your life? Let's not be obtuse, okay? But obviously a narcissistic psychopath like this woman doesn't see it that way, I guess. So the prenup, which was signed back on June 15th, 2013, outlined financial agreements for their marriage, and she was also seeking $2 million in proceeds from the sale of Eric's share of a stone masonry business after his death. I mean, she's a sick one. This one is, okay. The only way she could claim ownership or rights to the company is if Eric should die prior to Kouri while the two are lawfully married, according to the lawsuit. The prenup states that in the event of Eric's death, Kouri would receive his partnership interest in the company, but prior to his death, he reportedly assigned his ownership of the business to the Eric Richens Living Trust, which he was very smart. He had suspicions. There were a couple instances before where he suspected she had tried to poison him. They had even had a conversation. He had accused her of this. He had told other family members about this, about his suspicions. And this was, an issue with them, because obviously if you think your spouse is trying to poison you, you're going to have a problem with it. And he was suspicious of her for a long time. I think he was, moving stuff around. He was making arrangements to put his assets in his sister's name, in his business partner's name. He was, changing the recipient to his life insurance policies from her to other people that, he knew would then be able to take care of his son. So it's really sad story, because it's he was trying to stay with her in that marriage for their kids, and she just seemed like a very selfish, greedy person who was trying to benefit and trying to financially gain from, this in any way she could. She didn't really care, I don't think, about her marriage or even her children at all. I think she wanted to have financial means to be able to do whatever she wanted. Her company that she had, where she, flipped houses or redid houses, and it was in trouble. There was some serious debt there, and I think that she just wanted to get out of it and wanted to start over in a way that she couldn't do with her husband in the way. So in a really poetic justice way, though, it turns out that the sister of Eric Richens is now suing Kouri Richens, alleging horrific in-game to profit from his death. And I hope she is able to win. I don't see what she's going to get out of this woman by the time she pays for a defense, or, does she even have any money? I mean, like I said, he was very smart to move a lot of it around to make sure that she wasn't just going to gain all of this from divorcing him or leaving him, or, worst case scenario, killing him, which is what she ended up doing. So I don't know if this was just a vengeful move or a spiteful move. Either way, I'm here for it, because, like I said, this woman has audacity, and that's one thing she is not lacking at all in. So she filed the lawsuit against her brother's widow Tuesday, accusing Kouri Richens of enacting a horrific endgame to steal money from her husband, orchestrate his death, and profit from it. So Katie Richens Benson, who is the personal representative of her brother's estate and trustee of his living trust, has accused Kouri Richens of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from Eric Richens, wrongfully borrowing large amounts of money on his credit cards, fraudulently borrowing $250,000 using a forged power of attorney, stealing tax payments from him, and taking secret insurance policies out on his life. The lawsuit states that Eric Richens had at least 2 retirement accounts with about $55,000 between them that should have gone to his estate when he died, but that Kouri Richens wrongfully obtained a payout on both accounts. She is a trifling little hoe. And she also accuses Kouri of stealing other estate property after Eric Richens' death, including at least $225,000 in cash. Who the fuck has that kind of money laying around? My goodness. I mean, geez. Theater room furniture, an electric motorcycle, a flatbed trailer, and several vehicles, ATVs and other recreational vehicles. I mean, my goodness. And then she wrote the book, which she made money off of there as well. And it's also kind of in this whole mix, because she's alleging that Kouri Richens included all of them in the book without the family's consent, using their name, image, identity, and likeness. And that she hasn't shared any portion of the proceeds from that book, and she has kept all the money for herself. So she's seeking $5 million in the lawsuit, and I hope she wins. I really do. So this just goes on to kind of describe the financial issues she was having with her business. And then in 2019, she started stealing money to fund her business and try to get out of her money issues. So by February 2022, Kouri Richens and her business owed at least $1.8 million to hard money lenders. So he found out about this in September 2020, and, you know, she's estimated to have taken $200,000 from her husband's bank accounts and charged more than $30,000 on his credit cards. And he still stayed with her after that, you know? I mean, I just don't understand people like this. This is just sick greed. And how do you make 3 children with somebody and then go on to be so driven by jealousy, hate, and money? It's just beyond me. So between 2014 and 2022, Kouri took out several separate insurance policies on her husband's life, which would provide over $1.5 million of coverage if he died. And it noted that Kouri was listed as the sole beneficiary. And she's believed to have taken these out without her husband's knowledge. So her next court hearing is scheduled for September 1st. So in a couple days, we'll know what's going on with her little bitch ass. Okay, so that's Kouri Richens. Let's move on. Oh, actually, I did want to tell you guys about some of the Google searches that she did after killing her husband allegedly. So I'll just breeze over a few of these. Let's see. She accessed an article titled "Signs of Being Under Federal Investigation," and one with the headline "Delay in Claim Payment for Death Certificate with Pending Cause of Death." Some of her other searches were "How to Undo Microblading," "What kind of doctor was Dr. Pepper?" and "Little Nas X married." Okay, girl, whatever. And some other searches were "Luxury prisons for the rich in America." Okay, all right. Is naloxone similar to heroin? What is considered non-natural manner of death? And Kouri Richens, commas, net worth. Okay, girl, you Googling yourself? Whatever. So she searched for information on whether her family had donated to the Summit County Police Department, and searched for information on Utah prisons, if police can see your deleted messages, and how long life insurance companies take to pay. So she also searched for if the cause of death can be changed on a death certificate, and if cops can force you to take a lie detector test. And her criminal defense attorney say it's nothing. She's just Googling away, no big deal. So, I don't know. She seems like a weird bird, if you will. I mean, I don't know what's going on with her, but it's giving me SSRIs and, wine mom vibes. So, let's move on from this hot-ass mess of a woman, and we'll see what happens with her case. On to Bryan Kohberger. Okay, let's see what's going on with his scary-ass potential quadruple murdering self.
All right, Steve and Rich, Bryan Kohberger's defense team, as Steve was just saying, is raising issues with the prosecution not turning over all of the DNA evidence. For more on this, let's bring in now Robert Schulk. He's a defense attorney and a former prosecutor. So, Bob, good to have you here. Let's walk through this. You've got defense trying to compel the judge, his name is John Judge, to have the prosecution turn over all investigative and related evidence of genetic genealogy. Now, the judge has not made a decision here, but I wanted to ask you, is this a bona fide defense request, or is it a stall tactic?
No, this is a bona fide, legitimate defense request. Under a seminal case of the Supreme Court of Brady versus Maryland, the defense is entitled to information that potentially could exculpate them or could benefit them. The prosecution should err on the side of caution here and elect to turn over this information, because this is the probable cause that led to Bryan Kohberger being a suspect in this case, then placing him in custody and then taking that confirmatory, what's known as a buccal swab. It's a cotton swab of the mouth that they use to get the more specific STR DNA that is used normally in criminal cases. This genealogy and this genetic genealogy information is definitely discoverable. The defense is doing the right thing. And again, unless the prosecution wants to lose this case on an appeal down the road, it seems like they have a strong case here. I would err on the side of caution. And when I was a homicide prosecutor, always turned this kind of stuff over, because this is what causes great cases to be overturned at a higher court.
Now, the prosecutors say they do have one more test to present, but that test is still at the lab. So they're going to provide it, but, they can only get it from the lab as quickly as the lab can process that. So does that seem like a reasonable position from the prosecution, that saying, listen,
yes,
I have
absolutely.
one more vial?
These types of...
Okay.
Hello?
Yes, these types of tests take a long time. There's a lot of paperwork that gets generated. There's a lot of individuals that peer review and review these types of cases before they're published. So the prosecution and the lab absolutely is allowed to take their time. It's not a delay or a stall tactic where they'll try to say, oh, look, gotcha, and force the defense into a quick trial. The judge would be definitely incorrect and not granting a continuance if the DA's lab is taking longer than normal.
And the defense called Dr. Leah Larkin. She's one of 4 genetic genealogists testified on law enforcement searches of family DNA sites. I want to listen and then talk about it after.
If you add a kit to Family Tree DNA, they automatically opt you in. There is a way to opt yourself out, but you kind of have to know where to find it. It's not obvious. The total database at Family Tree DNA and the total database at GenMatch are both larger than the number of people who've opted in.
Bob, I'm not sure if you were able to hear it, but if you were, what does this mean as it pertains to this case?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about DNA where individuals, I think Nancy was talking about earlier, are whether or not they're opting in to share their DNA, where this would be something that would be discoverable or something that could be used in a criminal case. And I think this is going to be, a groundbreaking case that potentially could go all the way up to the highest courts in the state and in the country for people who share their DNA with a 23andMe or an Ancestry DNA. Are they going to be roped into? Are their identities going to be disclosed in homicide cases such as this, where they had no intention of sharing it, or either they didn't opt out on sharing it or they didn't read the fine print, so to speak, and whether or not a court is going to more or less just allow blanket discovery of that information, which, protective orders would potentially have to be filed if people are scared, and rightfully so, considering the facts of this case. So, I mean, it's going to be, like I said, groundbreaking on many levels, depending on how much discovery is turned over and what's allowed at the trial.
See, and I don't know. What do you guys think about the genetic genealogy DNA? They're using it in more and more cases these days. From the jump, I have been very apprehensive about this sort of thing. I don't really think I feel too great about it. Obviously, we want to catch people who are killers and things like that, but it's like, I look at it like, I don't know, just an overreaching thing, in my opinion. It's kind of like how, people advocate for like cameras that are put up in public places, like criminal cameras, who, well, you can argue, well, it stops people from car thefts and people who commit crimes out in the open and things like that, and the cops can easily trace those people and catch them quicker. It's like, yeah, that's all fine and great and everything, but it's like, my goodness, so we're just going to have more and more and more overreach from the government. Like, they're going to be able to put cameras, they're going to be able to track you down based on DNA that your third cousin twice removed, submitted to 23andMe, and it's like, I get that these people are criminals, I get it, but something doesn't feel right. Maybe it's the libertarian side of me, or the, constitutionalist in me. I just think that instead of addressing the problems of why do we have this society of sick people who commit all these different crimes, why don't we address that? Why don't we try to improve our society and the mentality of people? We'd rather just put our thumb down harder on people to try to quelch that. I don't know. What do you guys think? I would love to know your thoughts. But that is that for the DNA questions that are being brought up as far as the defense goes in this case. So in a Wednesday filing, defense attorney Jay Logsden revealed that Kohberger's team was raising 24 issues in support of the allegations. However, the memorandum including those details was filed under seal. Prosecutors who Kohberger's team is accusing of withholding exculpatory evidence have until Wednesday to respond, and a motion hearing is scheduled for September 1st. At a hearing on Friday, August 18th, Kohberger's team sought to discredit DNA evidence, and in a probable cause affidavit, and look who they called, my god, in a probable cause affidavit made public in January, prosecutors revealed key evidence used to obtain the initial warrant for his arrest. So this was the defense expert, ma'am, well, how many bong rips did you have before coming to court today? I mean, you got the pink hair with the roots, the hand tattoo, bracelets. So, and then on Wednesday, he also waived his right to a speedy trial, postponing the proceedings that would have begun next month. His trial was supposed to start on October 2nd, so that's all been pushed back. It's probably going to be years now before this actually sees a courtroom, and they're, basically arguing to try to get this thrown out, which it's not going to, but that's wishful thinking. So the hearing scheduled for the 1st in the case against Bryan has been vacated as of 1 day ago. So Friday's hearing was intended to review a motion to disallow cameras in the courtroom of any further proceedings in the case, and on the docket also was his motion to dismiss the indictment on the grounds of biased grand jury, inadmissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and a prosecutorial misconduct in withholding exculpatory evidence. So the state argues that the documents supporting the motion contain detailed factual and evidentiary issues that will require not only review and submission of the entire grand jury transcript, so the court is able to assess the defendant's claim in context, as well as what appears to be complex scientific representations and disputes. So basically the state needed more time to answer to these motions and these things that were filed by the defense attorneys. So the judge had previously wanted to have this hearing by August 30th, but they filed for an extension, and the hearing date was then rescheduled to give them time to prepare for rebuttal in the motion to dismiss. So the state's response to the defense motion is due on September 14th, and any reply from the defense is due by September 20th. The hearing has been rescheduled for September 22nd at 10:30 a.m. So we'll be on the lookout for that as well. We're definitely keeping up with this case. One of the big ones on this channel that I have been avidly following. So I'm curious to see where this all is going to go. And I'm curious to see what you guys think. What do y'all think about this case, and whether or not, there's any funny business going on? I think that there's a lot of questions still. And since we didn't have the preliminary hearing, we only had the grand jury indictment, which is sealed, and we didn't really have any access to what all exactly do the state have as evidence. We'll all be waiting with bated breath to see what exactly kind of case they're going to put forward. So yeah, we'll see, guys. So this is Lindsay Clancy. She is being accused of killing her 3 small young children, throwing herself out of a second-story window in her home in Boston, Massachusetts. Now this story is somewhat different than the Chad Doerman case, who both of these people killed their 3 small young children. And you always have to wonder what goes through the mind of a woman who could kill her offspring. I mean, you have to just try to justify it in your mind as something being seriously mentally disturbed with that person, as opposed to a man killing his kids. It's just as bad, just as wrong. There's no one greater or lesser than the other, but I think that's why the cases have been covered differently. But nevertheless, she is actually still in hospital. She was paralyzed from this fall that she took. There were so many warning signs beforehand that something was wrong with her. She had been on many different medications prior to this event happening, but the prosecution's alleging that there was premeditation, that this defense of insanity and her being out of her mind is not valid, and that she searched for restaurants where she could send her husband that would give her enough time to commit these crimes, and that there was forethought and she was perfectly of sound mind when she did this. I don't know. I tend to think that after looking at the facts of this case, there was something seriously wrong with her. Now, does that mean that she should be treated any differently? Absolutely not. She should be held responsible, and she needs to be held in a mental facility for the rest of her life. I mean, that's just what it is. I don't believe in sending them to a mental hospital until they get better. I think that's bullshit. I think that should not be allowed. But nevertheless, her next court date is September 28th, and that will be a probable cause hearing. So one big question that a lot of people have in this case is, will her husband be forced or even allowed to testify against his wife? Because normally when you have these sorts of things where one spouse is being convicted of a crime, they are not compelled to testify against their spouse. That is just something that is precedent, and it's something that is well known. But in this case, there is something that could allow for testimony from the spouse. So,
of strangling her 3 kids.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Your Honor. 32-year-old Lindsay Clancy spoke from her hospital bed at her bail hearing. Police say she tried to jump out a second-floor window after strangling her children in the basement of her home.
Still party across the top floor of the house.
She is now paralyzed from the waist down. Clancy was a labor and delivery nurse. She even made videos for newborn mothers.
So there are a lot of benefits for both mother and baby.
Her lawyers say she was suffering from postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. But prosecutors say she was clear thinking and planned the murders.
She used Apple Maps to make sure she would have enough time to strangle each child before her husband returned from where she had sent him. The defendant did not take advantage of the situation when her husband left the home that night. She created the situation.
The prosecutor said Clancy used an exercise band to strangle 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan.
She had to strangle each of them to unconsciousness.
how do you strangle a
And then make sure the bands were squeezing their little necks for several minutes.
Clancy's defense attorney says she was seeking help that did not come in time.
She was having bad thoughts. She was having worsening depression. This is clearly a tragic.
Clancy's husband, Patrick, says he forgives his wife. And so does this man. You might recall Russell Yates. He's the husband of the notorious Andrea Yates, who drowned their 5 children in a bathtub 22 years ago.
The next step of forgiveness, I'd say, is understanding it's a sickness. Like in this case, you can do all you can at home, but you really can't protect yourself from a psychotic person at home. I mean, they get up in the middle of the night, light the house on fire.
George Parnham was Andrea Yates' attorney.
To come to a realization that you took the lives of the people that you gave life to, they have to live with this for the rest of their lives.
Dr. Catherine Berndorf treats women with postpartum depression.
She was not in her, quote, right mind when she made those decisions. She believed that by killing her kids, by killing herself, that she was probably helping them. She was not in a sane state of mind.
Dr. Berndorf says some patients will need to be medicated.
For postpartum psychosis, we often use at minimum 2 medications, a mood stabilizer and an antipsychotic.
She was on like about 13 or more medication. So medication wasn't the issue. It was over medication. And was that, part of the problem? Do the doctors bear any responsibility in this case? That's another interesting question I feel that should be raised, because she was seeing physicians, she was seeing, doctors that were prescribing her all these different sorts of medications. And it's like, did those things act, in tandem with one another to create, this storm that eventually led to this woman to act on killing her 3 kids and trying to kill herself by throwing herself out of a window? And it's like, I don't understand how you are able to successfully kill your 3 kids, but then unsuccessfully kill yourself. It just, that to me also seems very suspicious and just very like, okay, if you really wanted to do that, I would think that you would have been successful at it, because you just achieved killing 3 small children, but you couldn't, finish yourself. I don't get that, really.
Those are 2 serious medications that work very well.
Lindsay Clancy's defense attorney also says she was over-medicated, taking 12 different drugs over a 4-month period.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So apparently so there are a few instances where a spouse can be forced to testify: the commission of a crime among spouses, any communications made in the presence of a third party, or emails sent from email systems. And the other exception is any allegations of child abuse. So in New York, the privilege belongs to the spouse who the testimony is about, but in Massachusetts, it belongs to the witness in the case. So in Massachusetts, the spousal privilege applies only to testimony in court and not before a grand jury. So if he is subpoenaed, he will have no choice but to testify in this murder trial. So I'm sure he'll be called. I just don't see how he wouldn't be. But overall, what a tragic thing. I mean, I don't know how you find that much forgiveness for someone. I mean, the husband of Andrea Yates, he immediately came out and said he forgave her. And same thing with this guy. I just don't. I mean, that takes a strong type of person. That takes a bigger person than I feel like I would be. But who knows? What do you guys think? We'll be following this one too. This one hasn't had as much coverage, I think, because of the implications of mental health. And just, that's one thing I just don't understand why. Because it's kind of similar to the Chad Doerman thing. But the Chad Doerman thing was a bit different because obviously he hunted his children down with a gun. Actively in front of his other family members. So yeah, a little bit different. Anyways, let's move on to this man here. I just wanted to show you guys this booking information. This was another case that has been very under the radar, and even as I was looking for updates on all of these different cases, I've been trying to follow this one, but it's been extremely difficult to get any updates on this case. I think because of the nature of it. You know, this is a trans person who killed his father and tried to kill his sister. And I think the reason why this case is being kept under the radar and, you know, they're not really publishing a lot about it is the same reason why we still haven't received the manifesto from the trans shooter, the girl who shot up the Christian school in Nashville, you know, because they don't want to talk about these people's violent tendencies, and they don't want to talk about all of the negative aspects of being a person who has these sort of mental issues. So, but anyways, I just wanted to show you all this because it lists this person as a female here on the inmate detail, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous, and that probably indicates that he's in a female prison. Okay, this man here. So just absolutely outrageous clown world shit, but nevertheless, that is what it says here. So here he is, you know, trying his best to be feminine. I don't know. Ooh, yikes. So this trans person advised cops that he hit very non-secular father in the head with a hammer earlier, then stabbed him. So transgender accused of killing his father allegedly advised police that he struck him in the head with a hammer and then stabbed him and his sister. So Nikki Secondino, Nicholas I think was his actual name, who was 22, was arrested and charged for murder of his father, Carlo, 61, and homicide of his 19-year-old sister. And he apparently confessed to the stabbings, but not before leading the police on a wild goose chase and claiming that intruders had entered the home and then attacked his dad and his sister. But obviously that could have never been true because the sister survived the attack and was able to point to her brother as being the culprit. He later went on to describe, "My father was sitting on the sofa. I hit him on the pinnacle with a hammer. Then I reached for my favorite German knife and stabbed the shit out of him. My sister got here and tried to seize me, and I stabbed her within the again. What? And I stabbed her again with what the fuck is this sentence? Okay. And I stabbed her in the head and abdomen. I needed them useless." Whoever wrote this needs help. Okay. So here he is. He smiled on the way in and out of the jail being arrested, and, you know, absolutely seemed to have no remorse whatsoever. So there was a resurfaced interview from 2020 on this YouTube channel here, which we kind of took a look at whenever I first covered this case. So he described his father as a standard Italian man who needed nothing to do whoever wrote this is a retard, who wanted nothing to do along with her transition to a lady, which is not possible. And then he recalled an earlier incident in his childhood when he refused to put on boy swimming trunks regardless of his mom's objections. "She pressured me to wear swim trunks, you know, that a boy would normally wear. How dare his mother dress him like the sex and gender that he is, okay? I had a full-blown meltdown. I simply cried and screamed. Well, that's not surprising, considering your emotional range seems to be quite disturbing in general. So that is this man here, this who's accused of killing his father. Like I said, it's been really hard to find any details about that case, but nevertheless, I'll keep trying to keep up with it, but I couldn't even find when the next court date was for this individual. All I saw was that there was one in April and nothing really after that. So I will let you guys know if there's anything else that develops here. So then the final one is the Gilgo Beach murderer. The last couple things that have come out with this were basically not much new. There's a possible new link with a new victim for a murdered New Jersey mother, Victoria Camara. So they're trying to link him to other unsolved murders. They've tried this before with other women around the country. Apparently he had different properties and different areas. He visited different places. So they're trying to link any potential cold cases to him, as they're labeling him a serial killer. Nothing that has been actually solidly tied to him, though, as far as any new victims go. But one of the biggest stories that came out about this was the guy that we talked about in the first video I did discussing this case. The police chief who basically got in trouble for beating the shit out of a defendant who broke into his car and stole some of his dildos or something of that nature. I'm not really sure. It's kind of all foggy, but I know that he is a sick-ass freak, and he was the reason why a lot of these different cases went cold for as long as they did, because he was into the industry that he was also looking into. You know, he loved the sex work, industry as well. He was a customer. So he didn't want to solve any murderers of these young women who were all sex workers, because he didn't want to get any links tied to him. He didn't want to get his, he didn't want to blow up his own spot. So, a disgraced police chief accused of botching Long Island serial killer case arrested on suspicion of soliciting a sex worker. So he dipped back into the pot, after being embarrassed and utterly disgraced over not probing these cases the way that he should have, because he was probably a customer maybe of some of these young ladies. It's possible that, once discovered the bodies of these individuals, he might have recognized them and thought, oh shit, I have paid for sex with that young woman, and I don't want this to come back on me, so I'm not really going to do that much investigating. It's just a theory that I have, but anything's possible. But he couldn't help it. He dipped a toe back in, and so now he's even more of a disgrace, and people just, it brings into question a lot of faith that people have in police, and when shit like this comes out, it just really does put a lot of doubt into people's minds as to whether or not the people that you trust to solve these cases and to bring justice are really doing the job that they should be doing and can be trusted doing that job. So, nothing really new on the case for this guy, Rex Heuerman, as far as his court proceedings go. It's still very early on, and I think they're still doing a lot of investigating. I think they prematurely arrested him because, per the prosecution and per the state, they didn't want him to go out and commit any more crimes, and they thought that maybe he would have because he was contacting sex workers again, or something of this nature. But hopefully they have done their due diligence, and they really do have a solid case, and they are going to be able to secure a conviction, because we've seen this time and time again where the prosecution really drops the ball because they get a little overzealous. So what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments about each one of these cases, whichever one you are following and interested in. Let me know what y'all think, and which ones do y'all want to kind of see more coverage on. Like the video if you liked it. Please subscribe to the channel, guys. I would very much appreciate y'all for doing that, and it really means a lot. And let me know, guys. Until next time, I will see y'all later. Bye.
I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people. The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.